D.C. police officer Michael Fanone remembers January 6th all too well. Even though he came to Myrtle Beach to forget for a week. Tuesday, he'll testify in Washington before a special committee of House members looking into what happened that day. And here's part of what he's going to say. You're hearing it here first.
I was beaten. I was struck numerous times at the base of my skull with a taser device. And as a result, I suffered a heart attack, traumatic brain injury. Now I'm grappling with PTSD.
A House committee is investigating, but Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who admitted it was an unprecedented move, rejected two Republicans who are defenders of former President Donald Trump from serving on the panel. Congressman Jim Banks and Congressman Jim Jordan, seen here.
The people who did it are being held accountable. There are like 500 people who've been prosecuted. This just shows the politics behind it.
In light of that, I asked Officer Fanone, who says he leans Republican, if he's concerned that the probe will be too political.
I mean, everything on Capitol Hill is political in nature. Are some people, some lawmakers going to, use the information that's brought out as a result of that investigation for politically advantageous purposes? Sure. But to me, what's important is that the information gets out so that people really understand what happened that day.
Here's what investigators say happened that day. 4 people died. 1 was shot and killed by police. Another Capitol police officer who had been attacked by protesters died the following day. 2 police officers who responded later took their own lives. More than 100 police officers were injured. The goal of the probe is to determine who's responsible. Officer Fanone believes those who participated in the breach of the Capitol that day are responsible for their actions. He also believes former President Trump is responsible for what happened that day as well.
Do you think he could have stopped it at any point?
I do, yes.
And do you think that if he'd said sooner, hey, no violence, it would have not gotten to that point? Or do you think it would have been the same? Or what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that, had he come out earlier on with a much more clear directive, that he could have avoided a significant amount of violence.
There are questions about the role officers played that day and if more should have been done by them to secure the Capitol.
Some would argue that it happened and it shouldn't have happened in the first place, even if, those people stormed the Capitol. There should have been a situation and a plan in place to stop that from happening.
Well, I agree. I mean, there's 2 ways to look at January 6th, and both of them are relevant. Number one is looking at the day from a micro level. The security failures that took place, the lack of equipment, training, preparation, by the agencies that were in charge of protecting the Capitol complex. But you also have to look at it from a macro level, which is, this violent, vitriol political rhetoric that was being utilized by both sides of the political aisle in the months and really in the years leading up to January 6th.
As for what Officer Fanone wants to see happen this week,
all I want is that, a true accounting of what occurred that day at the Capitol complex comes to light so that all Americans can recognize that, this event did occur. It was violent. It was brutal. And maybe that will, go a long way into helping us as Americans prevent it from happening again.
That's not a good sound, but for some, it ends up meaning a second shot.
We provide hope for these guys.
Dustin Walters agreed to this story with the hope that everyone watching will take a minute, forget the stigma about addiction, and walk away with a new perspective.
There's guys that have been incarcerated for 20 and 30 years, and after they get out of our program, they live a life beyond their wildest dreams.
He's been the peer mentor supervisor for Horry County's jail diversion program for 3 years now. Many who sit in these chairs at the J. Reuben Long Detention Center are here for minor offenses, including possession or petty larceny.
Most of the things that we see are people who have been arrested as a direct result of their drug use.
Drug use that starts because of pain.
They're taking the opioids because it's making them feel better. It's giving them that warm hug. It's alleviating all of the problems that they're having. And it's the solution. It's what they've been looking for all along.
And once they find it, Walter says many become hooked before they even know it. Then it's a dependence, then it's a sickness.
Once you feel that sickness, once it takes over, you'll basically do anything to get that fix, to alleviate the pain, really. It's not so much about getting high anymore. Once it gets to a certain point, you're surviving.
And then it happens.
So an example, whenever you wake up in the morning and you feel like you have the flu and you know that there's a solution to that flu, and so you don't have any money, you don't have any means to get that solution, then what are you going to do? Well, you're going to go do whatever you can to get that.
And he says it can happen to just about every single person, whether they were prescribed pills or used them recreationally.
If you feel like it can't happen to you, it can. It's definitely the ones that feel like they have control over their use that, that probably get into trouble the most.
Dustin got into trouble.
At one point in my life, I was walking down the side of the road, picking up cigarette butts, just trying to survive. At one point, I was facing 640 months.
That's 53 years. He only served 3 months because he says his drug charges ended up being dropped. Now he's proof anyone can change.
I'm just trying to give back what was so freely given to me, and help carry the message that we do recover. That we can go through the things that we all go through in active addiction and make it out.
Over the past 5 years, he earned 2 degrees, one in human services and another in addiction psychology. He graduated with honors, and he's working on a master's in social services.
I almost was not able to follow through with my dream because of my criminal record, because of the stigma, because of the way that we're viewed.
But he made it, and now he wants to make sure more people get a second shot.
If I were to have been offered a program when I was incarcerated, the many times that I was incarcerated, maybe I'd have got help a lot sooner.
He says right now the 2 big challenges are not enough resources and not enough understanding.
We're not the typical criminal that someone thinks. We had a problem that took us down a dark road, and we stayed down that dark road for however long we stayed down it, and part of the problem is the stigma and just the lack of resources that are available to people who are trying to do something different.
Dustin says, bottom line, the area needs an inpatient treatment center.
Why is the only long-term treatment program a jail program?
Until that's answered, that sound will actually continue to be a second shot for some.